Good morning, America, or any country in the world that may be watching this. In fact, we are going out to 190 countries worldwide. That's not been verified, but it's what I dreamt last night. And this is another episode, of course, of Ask a Brit, the series in which you get to ask me, a Brit, any question you like, you know, so long as it doesn't implicate me in some international criminal plot. And I'll answer it. The only thing is, you've got to put in the comments below where you ask your question, make sure to use the hashtag #AskABrit, and that way I can find you when I'm searching for you at the end of the week. Now, unlike last week, I don't have a squeaky chair to distract everybody, but actually between you and me, that was my knees playing up and not a squeaky chair. That's the sad state of affairs that I find myself in at the age of 35. Anyway, enough blabbering on about a load of crap. We're going to get to some fine questions that you guys have sent me this week, starting with this one. Tim Sterndell, you're up first. You ask, does everyone in the UK have a YouTube channel? A YouTube channel? A YouTube channel. I'm going all American on you guys. I found that most of my subscriptions are Brit. The quick answer is yes, all 63 million of us have a YouTube channel. I'm kidding, that's sarcasm. British sarcasm, no less. But there is a little bit of a truth to the dominance of British YouTubers, because I think in the top 10 highest earning YouTubers, among which I am one, in the future, maybe, who cares at this point? It's just fun, isn't it? It's just enjoyable. You know, I think a good 3 or 4 of them were British and a couple of them Australian, right? And I think it's because everybody loves our accents, firstly, obviously. People tell me that all the time. So I don't know, that is a weird one. So thank you, Tim. And the next question comes from Queen's Own Hussar, I don't know why I'm speaking like that again, who asks, do you worry that having been out of the country for so long, when you do return home, the country you return to might be unrecognisable from the one you left 9 years ago? Are you worried that you'll feel like a stranger in the country you grew up? Well, I'm not worried about it. I kind of like the challenge of the everyday changes and the long-term changes that come about in life. But I have read that a lot of expats, when they go back home, they do feel like they're a fish out of water suddenly, in much the same way that they were when they moved to the country that they'd left England for. I'll get there and suddenly I'll be confronted with the almighty terror that the size of each individual piece of Toblerone has changed. I don't know how I'm going to cope with that, actually. I might need counselling. I do think it would be strange. I've almost become acclimatised, or acclimated, as the Americans would say, to the American way of life now, after 9 years, and I'd have to give up a lot of that. Okay, the next question is, it's kind of a combined effort, because we have 2 people that more or less asked the same question, so I just thought I'd give you both recognition. One of those, River Song 64, Doctor Who reference, thank you, from Twitter, that's from our Twitter account, as well as Bluestream 1977 asks here on YouTube, something along the lines of, have any of your friends or family back in the UK accused you of being too American? Well, I don't know that they've accused me of being too American. I think they've pointed out that I've become somewhat Americanized. I can't deny that. I hold my hands up, and I have, and it's natural. You know, you put yourself in a situation for 9 years. It doesn't matter what the situation is. You could move to America, you could start a job, right, that you work in for years. We start adopting the language of that particular position in a way that you'd never had before. You start using business jargon and things like that. Same when you move to another country, it's unavoidable, and it's also not even problematic. I don't know why a lot of people do look upon the Americanization of somebody as problematic. It's just a way of being able to adapt and to assimilate, for want of a better word. I'm not a droid or anything like that, but you come here and you learn the language that is most often spoken. It's like when people say to me, Lawrence, why do you say soccer when you mean football? And I think the two are interchangeable, let's not forget that. And I say soccer here because it's just what Americans use themselves. If I started saying football to them, it really is going to confuse matters, just because of the other inferior, the other sport, the other football. Okay, and we actually had another question on Twitter, and by the way, you can follow us on Twitter at LostInThePondUS. But this one comes from Aries Storm Code, who says, what do you think about our history? Obviously that's quite a broad question. America has quite a wide and varied history. as I've mentioned many a time before, it's quite commonplace to hear Brits or people from outside the US say, oh, they don't really have a history, you know, it only goes back a few hundred years. Well, firstly, like I keep saying, you have to remember that there is a lengthy Native American history that actually goes back thousands of years, and we need to take that into account because it's everywhere you go, and are places that I'm going to be checking out on my Finding America series throughout time. And in fact, speaking of Finding America, when we were in St. Louis just on the Memorial Day weekend, we got to taste a piece of history because we got to check out the house of former President Ulysses S. Grant, so look out in the video for that feature. I'm fascinated by history in general, world history, European history, British history, and yes, American history. Alright, Patrick Smith asks on YouTube, Lawrence, have you ever worn a kilt? I was in Memphis with friends last year and I went for a night out on Beale Street in mine, and well, I got plenty of positive attention. I have not worn a kilt. I've worn something very similar to a kilt when nobody else is in the house and it's Saturday night. Okay, next question comes from JWB52Z. I do that every week, don't I? Stupid. And they ask, Lawrence, do you ever fancy yourself as the British Rick Steves but more posh?
Well, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. But join me now as we go to Croatia, to lovely Zagreb.
And I just realised we don't have the funds for that. It's not in the budget. Oh, it's bloody hot in here because we haven't got the air conditioning on, otherwise it would bloody drown me out. It's hot in the summertime. Anyway, Adventurer180 asks, I know you've mentioned wanting to visit the Grand Canyon, which I would recommend seeing from both the south and the north rims. Have you ever considered visiting other scenic places in Arizona, including and not limited to Meteor Crater, Sunset Crater, Sedona and Red Rock State Park, as well as Antelope Canyon and Petrified Forest National Park? Do you enjoy hiking? There's a lot of questions here. I'll get through them all here in just a second. Well, firstly, yeah, I want to see, you know, America in general. So if we can get to Arizona, which I recognize is a very large state, I don't just want to see the Grand Canyon. The Meteor Crater I find really interesting. I think to look at it, it just looks like a big hole in the ground, right, obviously. But then when you realize how that came about and that it was actually only, what, 50,000 years ago that happened, it sort of fills you with this awe, I think, that, or I imagine it does, that I want to be filled with. Katie asks, G'day Loza, did you know any Americans before moving over, and did you like them? And the reason I did an Australian accent there is because they started with G'day, and I think I know this person. Is this Katie C, who I went to school with, who moved out to Australia and would know me by the name Loza, because that's what I used to go by somewhat when I was younger, in my younger days. Anyway, to answer your question, whether or not you are indeed her, yes, I did. I knew many Americans, actually, because I went to university where I encountered those lot. And yeah, no, I think that the ones I befriended, certainly I liked very much. One of them I ended up marrying by accident, but she's all right. Zabina, who is a regular questioner of ours from Hungary, I believe. So like I said, we do have traffic coming from 192 countries, well, 3, UK, US and Hungary. But Zabina asks, is it easier to live in America by any means? Obviously quite a broad question there, so I wouldn't be able to touch on all the ways in which it's easier. As a Brit, it is somewhat easier from a sort of social sense, because you always have an icebreaker. You never have to think of an icebreaker, because as soon as you start speaking, you know, 50% of the time they're going to ask, oh, where's that accent from? And then you tell them the truth, and you know, some more questions come your way depending on who you're speaking to. You know, who do you vote for? What do you think of the royal family? That question is coming later, and all those kind of things. So it's really good, and I find that Americans in general, you know, have quite an interest in history or just British life, so that those conversations never end. And they never get old, really. You know, you'd think they would, them coming my way each time, but I think different people bring a different thing to it. I realise I'm pointing at the same person, and that person is me. Okay, Justin B. It's not the Justin B, is it? Hope not, because I think I offended you in 3 videos.
Yeah, and that run-in was really awkward.
Yeah, I did accidentally kick Justin Bieber in the arse. Was it accidental? Did it even happen? I'm lying. But anyway, Justin B asks, the weather at my house makes me want to know if you have ever been in a tornado, and was that something you ever thought about before coming here? to answer the second part first, yes. It was one of my worries about moving to the Midwest of the US because I knew that tornadoes were quite a prevalent thing and that I could be swept up like, Dorothy Gale. I don't know why I did that. Like Dorothy Gale in The Wizard of Oz in a house, right? I feared that was going to be it, and I'd land on a witch and kill her. That part was never part of my... But actually, since I've been living here, I've had this almost weird desire to see a tornado, right? Just one in the distance that causes no harm, right? It sort of ripples through a field and then disappears. No houses get destroyed, no lives get upturned, no witches get killed. I just want to see one in a field for a few seconds and say I've done it, because it sounds like a very nerve-wracking experience, and I'm all about nerve-wracking experiences, except looking over the edge of the Grand Canyon. I'm not going to do it. Don't even try to beg me again, right? Alright, bringing it down to television. Adam Manley asks, what British TV shows can you watch on American television? Coronation Street? Soap operas are notoriously hard to come by. On actual American television, like cable, right, it's quite hard to get a lot of the British television. I know you can get things like Downton Abbey on, was it PBS Masterpiece and things like that. So the PBS on television does have quite a few British shows. A lot of them from the olden days. But if you've got a Netflix account, firstly, or if you've got things like Amazon Prime, you have access to things like Doctor Who, Call the Midwife, what's the other one that's out right? Broadchurch, right? And then, just recently, the BBC has launched something called BritBox, which I understand is quite comprehensive, actually. You can get EastEnders, you can get Coronation Street, I think. Weirdly, even though it's not BBC Coronation Street, it does have some ITV shows on there as well. So yeah, I mean, it's fairly easy to get, and if you're a football fan, you can get all the Premier League games on NBC Sports. So I've just plugged a lot of corporations there, channels, and I'm not getting paid for that.
Yeah, they should really pay us.
Yeah, pony up the dough. I used to work for one of them, so I can't speak too harshly of them. Alright, hey, it's Firecracker3240 who asks, do Americans sound as stupid using British slang as I fear we do? I want to say things like get on, brilliant and rubbish, but I imagine I'd sound like a complete idiot. Of course you wouldn't. You'd sound amazing doing that. I actually challenge you to go to your nearest corner shop, or what do they call corner shops here? Shops, right? Small shop, and just say...
Gas station?
Yeah, a gas station. Go to a gas station, go in there and go, all right, love, have you got any Twizzlers? Well, Twizzlers we don't really have in England, so that wouldn't make sense.
You have M&Ms.
What we do? Could I have a bottle of Ribena? Oh, you're all out of Ribena? Oh, bollocks, that's well no good. Yeah, it does sound a bit strange, come to think. It only sounds strange, it doesn't sound stupid, it just sounds peculiar and unnatural, which can be funny. So do it, I just grunted there. Alright, Rob Norris, this is a great question. Are you going somewhere to see the total solar eclipse in August? I live right on the edge of totality, so I only need to go 10 miles or so to be in the path of totality. You know what? I have been planning this for the last 6 years. It's been in my online calendar for the last 6 years, and I guess totality it's in the Midwest, isn't it? It's sort of along the lines of Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky kind of area, and I absolutely want to go to one of those places. If there's no cloud cover, expect a video on that. It won't be called Finding America, it'll be called Finding the Solar System from Earth. That's the cheap way. I'm not Elon Musk, but I can get you some of the greatest footage from this part of America with just a cell phone, potentially. Next question is from Shark Tackler. That's the best YouTube name I've ever heard. Unless you're being literal, they've done nothing to you. Unless your name's Martin Brody. But anyway, Shark Tackler asks, American versus English beer. Okay, so British people, of course, will argue, well, of course, British beer is the best. We've got Newcastle Brown Ale and Boddingtons, and we put them together and we make an awful mess, but we drink it anyway because we're already pissed. And then those same British people will turn around and go, you've only got Miller Lite and Budweiser, which sounds German anyway and tastes like froth. But actually, there's more to American beer than just the aforementioned beers, right? So you've got local beers. There's a lot of sort of local breweries across the United States that make some fabulous beer, actually.
Yes.
Yes.
And Indianapolis is a good place for that, actually. So if you want to go and, fancy a trip across the pond.
Yeah, just go to Indiana for the beer. It's good. They do have some good things, and a lot of places do celebrate things like Oktoberfest. I'm not a beer connoisseur, so I can't speak to a lot of the specific ones, but there are hundreds and thousands, that might be a slight exaggeration, of different beers here.
There's a huge Oktoberfest here in Chicago, in
there
Lincoln
is.
Square.
Chicago does have a big Oktoberfest, and I would check that out if you're in town. No, I would almost argue, just because of the sheer size of America, there's actually possibly a greater variety of different beers here. But like I said, I'm not a connoisseur, so I don't want to get into that whole thing. But they do hoppy type stuff, that's often my favourite, and just all kinds of things really. So yeah, no, I like American beer as much as the next guy, unless the next guy is a teetotaler. We're down to the last two questions, and this one comes from Jennifer Arundel, who says, since you came to Florida when you were a child, would you ever want to return to Florida? I live in Miami, so I'm closer to the Everglades and the Florida Keys than I am to Orlando, but I'm sure you would enjoy a visit there as an adult too. I'm sure of that as well, and in fact, as proof, a few weeks ago I did a video on the national parks that I most want to visit. The Everglades was a big part of that, so check out that video. But yeah, a return to Florida would be excellent, because obviously I stayed a lot in Orlando. I was a child, I don't have much of a memory of it, so I would love to do that. Yeah, check out the south where you are, check out Jacksonville up in the north, and check out everything in between really. I've had a lot of suggestions on Florida, and I should say that Tara and I have been hard at work collecting all of these suggestions for all of the states that you find people have been putting forward. We built up a spreadsheet, which I won't share with you because that'd just be weird, but we're hoping to get to a lot of those places.
Keep them coming.
Keep them coming. If you've got any more suggestions for Florida or any other of the 49 states in this here United States, then put them in my mouth. No, don't do that. That would be weird. I've already got a dietary system going, and it doesn't involve words. I don't want to eat my own words again. And the final question, and this one I promised earlier, and this comes from Patty McCain, who asks, or rather states first and then asks, I am fascinated with English history. What are your thoughts on the monarchy? Okay, so this is a really interesting one, right? Before I moved to the US, at best, I was indifferent to the monarchy. And then, after living here and seeing just how fanatical a lot of Americans are about the royals over there, I realised that America alone, in tourist dollars, could pay for the taxes that we actually pay toward the royal family. So that argument sort of goes out the window, I feel like. And also, when you see it through American eyes, you take on this sort of ambassadorial role for the royals. You have to you find yourself either defending them or just sort of enhancing that viewpoint that Americans have of them and going, yeah, you know what, it is kind of fascinating that the Queen has been on the throne since the early 1950s and that there have been, 12, 13 presidents in that time. And things like that. You sort of take on this sense of weird undue pride. And then, of course, the monarchy, it doesn't just pertain to the monarchy of today. The monarchy goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. And just like I was saying earlier on about how I look at each president and their term in office and how I connect that to the history of the United States at each step of the way, you could do the same thing, of course, with the royals, with the monarchs. But speaking of history, this episode of Ask a Brit is now history. We've gone through all of the questions, so thank you once again for those. Keep them coming, like I said, in order to feature or potentially feature in these videos. You need to go ahead and use the hashtag #AskABrit. Down below in the comments section along with your question. So keep them coming, and this week look out for my video from St. Louis. It's going to be the official Finding America video. It's taken a lot to edit, and it's been just a great experience putting together all of this footage and of course going there. So be on the lookout for that. Until then, cheerio.